Winter has come. I believe any energy price support in Hunt's autumn statement a fortnight ago was based, at least in part, on the hope that there would be a mild winter. It's the first week of December, and that hope is already dashed as the temperatures hover sometimes only a little above freezing. Hello there, Tarky here. Although the Tories will try to blame the whole problem on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the reality is that the problems the UK especially will have to deal with this winter are the result of government policy. Choices made by Thatcher's Conservatives, tacitly agreed to by New Labour, and then reinforced by the austerity politics of Cameron and Osborne, have made this country's energy situation worse. Most Western economies have adopted, more or less willingly, the free market capitalist system, often called neoliberalism. This is the belief that the market, a mysterious entity made up of vastly disparate producers and consumers, knows best how to source and deliver goods and services, and that it should be left to do so, spared of anything but the lightest of regulations. Unfortunately, this is all a big fairy tale. As I've noted others say in earlier videos, there is no such thing as a free market. They are all set up to benefit particular interest groups and rarely for the commonwealth. In the modern iteration, they benefit a tiny number of corporates and wealthy individuals and offer nothing for less affluent people. Markets, in this guise, care not a jot for ordinary people and their real needs. They serve only the gods of capitalism themselves. Britain is not alone in failing to seek enhanced and secure energy security for the nation. Many European nations, most notably but not solely Germany, pinned energy needs on Russian gas and tying that state economically into globalism. Instead, it tied them to an authoritarian despot. However, it's Britain that is suffering amongst the highest costs associated with the reality of the Ukraine war. Despite Boris Johnson assuring us we weren't dependent on much Russian gas, we still have to pay the going international rate, in our case for supplies from Norway. Supplies which, understandably, other nations now wanted increased access to as well, which put prices up. That free market in action. Politically, as examples, the Tories specifically failed to invest in gas storage facilities, allowing stockpiles to fall dramatically. Any plans for a widespread campaign to insulate the nation's older housing stock, to promote energy efficiency in what exists already, have been abandoned or dismissed as green crap. Building regulations for such new construction as happens are much watered down under the pretence of costs compared to what they should be. Even as recently as August, the leadership hopefuls were doubling down on restrictions to onshore wind and solar. Idiotic complacency. If you want a cost, how about energy bills trebling in a year? And this would have been worse still if the government hadn't, rather belatedly, taken action to limit the rises at least somewhat. But much direct assistance ends in only a few months' time. The average bill cap in place is being raised again, and in a low-wage, low-benefit society like the UK has become, with many of those most vulnerable also living in the sort of properties desperately needing modern, up-to-date insulation, what is already happening is those people utterly dreading having to make the decision to heat cold homes for fear of the huge financial cost. People will suffer, and many possibly die, because of a failure to understand that heating will always be needed in any housing in Northern Europe through the winter. It's a human necessity. Faith was placed in that free market to provide, A market not set up to provide the necessities to ordinary people, but profit to a very few. Markets, as they are constructed under neoliberalism, do not care about people. The consequences of cold aren't just things being a bit uncomfortable. As well as proven and verifiable significant harm to mental health and well-being, there's a wide array of physical ills caused by the cold directly or indirectly by the effects cold has on poorly built houses. A 2011 report from University College London's Institute of Health Equity, known as the Marmot Review, estimated that 21.5% of excess winter deaths in the UK were attributable to cold homes. In 2020 to 21, for example, 63,000 excess winter deaths were recorded in England, 10% of which were estimated to be directly attributable to fuel poverty, according to the latest edition of the Marmot Review. Unfortunately, given the multiple attacks of inflation, declining wages and climbing energy costs, that figure might only get worse. I'll post a link in the video description to a recent BBC Future article which goes into much more detail about the physical and mental consequences of cold weather and cold homes. I know how bad things are, and I know the Tory government still hasn't really grasped the scale of the problem. But please don't succumb to dread over heating costs, and please do try to stay warm this winter for the sake of your own health and your loved ones and neighbours. If nothing else, you'll be well enough to vote the bastards out if there's an election called next year. And a final note to sign off with. I said at the outset that Hunt and Sunak gambled somewhat on a mild winter so they could reassure the party's fiscal headbangers about cutting spending in support of energy bills. I think this might be one of those situations where they will have to U-turn and make another commitment, but they simply can't or won't admit that just yet. Chin chin. Please like, subscribe and share. Thank you.